Oh, good.
Okay, then?
Yeah.
So we'll get started here. This is Shiurim L'Zecher Abba Mori, which was an annual shiur that Rav Soloveitchik gave on the yahrzeit of his father on Gimel Shvat. And we're not far from that. We're about a month away, less.
Right.
And I thought if we're learning Inyanei Tefillah and Brachos and Masechet Brachos, this would be a nice excursion for us, a nice piece. So we're going to do a lot of reading in the text, and you could follow inside, and I'll explain as we go along, and then you'll comment on it.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is on page Lamed Ches. You'll see that on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And you may see an arrow in the middle of the page. It's the paragraph that starts Labir Hadvarim.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what Rav Soloveitchik is going to do in this class, he's going to compare two different sugyas in Masechet Brachos. One is on Daf Chaf Aleph, and then he's going to fast forward to a sugya later on in the same Masechta, and that's going to be a sugya on Daf Lamed Aleph. So we're going from Chaf Aleph to Lamed Aleph, and that's all on this same page, Lamed Ches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just by way of introduction, the question is as follows. You know that when we talk about mitzvos, so we talk about an obligation, right? The word mitzvah means miloshen tzivui, and yet very often the halacha is sort of encouraging to add beyond the obligation. And in the case of tefillah, we're going to see a Gemara of Rabbi Yochanan that dramatizes this and says, "Halavai sheyispal adam kol yom kulo," and that's referring to Shemona Esrais, like one Shemona Esrais after another Shemona, as many as you want. And that sort of breaks the rules, because the rules are that when you're obligated in a recitation, that's where it begins and that's where it ends. You know, we don't encourage a person to add above and beyond, but in tefillah, yes, we do. So just to put the thing in perspective, is this going to reveal something very fundamental about tefillah, that tefillah is less inclined towards the chova dimension, the obligation, and more inclined towards one's inner desire or need or drive to pray. And this is not a philosophical discussion. I mean, it could be, but it's basically rooted in halacha. We want to know, in halachic terms, can I go beyond the chiyuv? And generally speaking, the rule is that this is the chiyuv. I can't go beyond the chiyuv. I can't, let's say, for example, I ate a meal and I benched. So I was mekayim the mitzvah of Birkas Hamazon. Now I decide, you know what, I'm in the mood to thank Hashem again. So I'll add another Birkas Hamazon. Can I do such a thing? Absolutely not.
No.
That would be what's called a bracha she'eina tzricha, an unnecessary bracha.
Bracha levatala.
It's not as severe as a bracha levatala, because at least you were thanking Hashem. So it's not, but it's certainly prohibited. You know, you get one shot at benching, and then you want to eat another meal, we'll give you another chance, but not another shot at benching.
Whereas you can do a second Amida without.
Possibly,
Well,
I don't know. I'm not sure, but this is what Rav Soloveitchik is working on, because one statement of the Gemara Daf Chaf Aleph in Masechet Brachos, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, seems to indicate just keep going. You know, if you want to say one Amida, another Amida, as many as you want, the whole day long.
No, but you'll be just starting to say blah, 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 blah. I mean, psychologically, you know, that's what, you know, if you overdo it, people won't be saying it properly.
Okay.
Psychologically, I'm talking about.
Could be that with every additional prayer, he gets more into it. He has more and more fervor. sometimes you daven once and you feel a little bit empty about it. Give me another try. Let me try again.
Well, I like Chazarat Hashatz. I can say Amen. I can have more kavanah when the Shliach Tzibur is doing it.
Right, but what happens if you yourself want to daven your own shema? Let's say you're at home and you're not at shul, or after the Shliach Tzibur finishes, or you feel it's hard to concentrate during Chazos Shatz, you want to add another tefillah. So if you take a look here, he says that Rabbi Yochanan Omar, that's on the third line in this paragraph, Halavai Shispalel Adam Kol Yom Kulo. If we're up to me, says Rabbi Yochanan, I would advocate davening the whole day, one Shemona Esrei after the other. And the Gemara thinks that in a case of a suffix, let's say, for example, I don't know whether I recited Kriyat Shema. Sometimes you forget it. Did I say Kriyat Shema? Did I not say Kriyat Shema? Right. So Rabbi Lazar is quoted as saying that Choser v'Koreh, that he has to again recite Kriyat Shema because he's in doubt as to whether he read it or not. But he says, Suffolk is palel, Suffolk lo is palel. He doesn't know whether he davened or not. Whoa, did I daven mincha today? Did I not? Is Einol Choser mispalel. He should not daven again. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is being very stingy about it. You know what? Not only if you know that you daven, you're not allowed to daven a second time, but even if you have doubts whether you daven the first time or not, you're not allowed to daven what might be a second time around. Because we're not going to allow you to daven a second time around. And the Gemara quotes Rabbi Yochanan who disagrees, and he says, "Valavayshis pal kol adam kol yom kula." It's like we have two extremes over here. We have one position of Rabbi Lazar. He's not going to allow you, to daven even in the case of something, which means maybe you didn't even daven yet. And Rabbi Yochanan is going to advocate that you daven the whole day. And Tosafos says that we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan, but he says with the following qualification. He says dafka b'safek is palin. It's not that Rabbi Yochanan is going to be accepted that the whole day I'm going to say one Shemona Esrei after the other. But if I have doubts whether I daven or not, I'm permitted to go ahead and daven. Avolvada is palil. If he's sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that he already davened, then he's not allowed to daven again. Teida, and I'll prove it to you. Domistoma lo poligahod yom Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel b'samuch v'nizkar shispal poseg. If a person is in the middle of Shemona Esrei, and all of a sudden it dawns upon him, the asimon goes down, it clicks that he already davened today. Did it ever happen to you? Happens to me all the time. In the middle of Shemona Esrei, whoa, what am I doing? It usually happens to me when I change locations, However, Tosafos adds one caveat, so to speak. Im yochel lechadish dover b'tfilah. So he says the following: that if he's sure, let's try to explain. He says if he's certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he already davened, and he still wants to daven again, then he's allowed to, on the following condition: Im yochel lechadesh dover b'tfilaso. If he can add something to his tefillah that was not there in the previous davening. Like, let's say, for example, I walk into a shul, and I had already davened, and the tzibur is about to daven, and I want to daven with them, but I already davened. So the halacha is, Im yochel lechadesh b'davar, if he can daven and add something, a new praise or a new petition that he hadn't prayed for in the first time around, then Yachsav Yispal, he's allowed to daven again. But in Lav, if he doesn't have the ability to add something, he had a whole list of requests and he filled them all in the first Shemona Esrei, then Al Yachsav Yispal, he's not allowed to daven again.
We just got one. One thing and daven again.
It seems, yes. Again, we're not paskening halacha, but what's that called when I'm machadish b'davar and I offer a tefillah when I already fulfilled my tefillah? Anybody know what that's called? Nidava. That's called the Tfilas Nidava. So if you take a look at the end of this paragraph, he summarizes 4 different principles that we've learned. Number 1, Aleph. Kol ki yeshna tfilas nidava b'olam. There's an entity called a voluntary tefillah. Number 2, but ein adam mispal nidava, but there's a restriction. He's only allowed to pray a tfilas nidava elim kein mechadish b'davar. He can't repeat the identical Shemona Esrei even on a voluntary basis because he already fulfilled his obligation.
So what would be a conceivable?
All of a sudden, I get a call that a friend
sick?
of mine, and this just happened to me recently, unfortunately was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he has to go into surgery.
So then you would say.
So now I already davened, but now I have something else to daven for. And I want to put it into the structure of Shemona Esrei. That's called the Tfilas Nidava because I'm being mechadish b'davar. Now, Brian is asking, is it enough that I just add one little change, so to speak, or one addition? I don't know. That we'll have to check in the postscript. But I definitely have to add a minimum of one addition to my Shemona Esrei. However, in this case,
I mean, it's a laughing day, and you want to daven for them. I mean, not a matter of quantity; it's a matter of quality. Yeah.
Okay. But again, it's a chidush b'davar, and it's okay. I already passed the threshold. It doesn't have to be necessarily a matter of life and death. Let's say I find out that I have to take an exam, and I didn't know about the exam this morning when I davened. Now I found out about it. I want to daven another Shemona Esrei. I'm allowed to do so. Or you may have a million things that you want to pray to Hashem about or for. And when you davened in the morning, or in the afternoon, or whenever it was, you didn't have in mind the whole list. Let's say you went through half of the list, or you remembered one thing, you didn't have the page in front of you. Now you have a page in front of you. It's got a whole list, I want my wife to love me. I want to have a good supper tonight. I want to have, I want to be able to be machabi my mother-in-law tomorrow night. I have a whole long list, And on the first Shemona Esrei, I forgot a number of items on my list. So now I can be mechadish b'davar. Are there any situations where the halacha will allow you to repeat Shemona Esrei without adding anything new? That's only number gimel, a mikra shel safek. If I have doubts as to whether I davened or not, I'm allowed to daven again, and I don't have to add anything. Strange. I mean, there's a 50% chance I'd already davened, and you're not allowed to daven again. And number 4, im hiskil ispal al dashi chova, he thought when he got up to say Shemona Esrei, he was obligated in tefillah, and now in the middle of Shemona Esrei, he realizes, you know what, I davened already. Can he complete his Shemona Esrei? What would you say, Rabbi Osai? Just intuitively, what would be your guess?
He should complete it. That would be my guess.
My guess would be the exact same.
And the law is he has to stop exactly dead in his tracks in the middle of Shemona Esrei. Eino yochel amshech. But why? Why can't I take the second half of that Shemona Esrei and call it an Nidava? Why? Because I realize that, hey, I already davened, I'm not obligated, but let me do it as a voluntary tefillah. In fact, I'm willing to be mechadish b'davar even.
Oh.
Can't do it. Why? Because I started the Shemona Esrei as a chova, and midway I want to continue it and complete it as an nidava. That's what you call min b'mino, min b'sheino mino, meaning these are two entities that cannot integrate. You can start at Tfilas Chova and finish at Tfilas Chova. You can start at Tfilas Nidava and complete at Tfilas Nidava. But you can't start at Tfilas Chova and complete it as a Tfilas Nidava. These are the 4 principles that we learned from this sugya.
I wonder what the philosophy. I mean, what's so terrible about that? But whatever. Okay, it's just telling you the halakha. It doesn't give you the reason.
Right. Now, in the bottom of this page, he quotes another Gemara in Berachot Lamed Aleph. So we're fast forwarding 10 blot. And the Gemara says, Yochel. Yochel always introduces Sahabim. I might think Yispal Adam Kol Yom Kulo. They let him daven one Shemona Esrei after another, after another, after another. And the answer is no, he can't do so. Why? Kfar mefurash al yidei Daniel. The pasuk says in Sefer Daniel, v'zimnin tlasa, 3 times. What's the significance of the number 3? That's the ceiling. That's the maximum. You can only daven 3 times. So again, we're not talking about a Tfilas Nadav over here. Tfilas Nadav is a separate entity, and he's Mechadish Badavar. We're talking about a Tfilas Chova. He wants to repeat the same exact Shemona Esrei. He's already davened 3 times. He's already fulfilled his obligation. The pasuk in Daniel is telling me he's not allowed to add another tefillah.
And what was the rationale for why he could repeat it twice?
He can only repeat it twice in the case of a suffix, because since it's possible that he didn't daven,
I heard that one.
Or he could have a tefillas nedava. He could offer up a voluntary tefillah on his own. But to say no, I want to daven the same identical Shemona Esrei that I davened an hour ago and add another Shemona Esrei, I cannot do so. We thought you could do so, but we quoted a pasuk in Daniel, and based on the pasuk in Daniel, we see that max is out at 3, and you can't add a 4th. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
And now we turn to page Lamed Tes. Okay. Rav Soloveitchik raises the following question, and I hinted at this before. Can a person pray, or shall we say recite would be a better word, Birkas HaMazon for the same meal, shtei pa'amim, meaning he finished Birkas HaMazon, and now, something moves him. Maybe I didn't thank Hashem enough. It was really a great, what do they call those big baguettes, with the hamburgers in them, and then you add the, the rotev shum. Am I getting you hungry at all? Anyway, so, right? So he ate it and he benched. And now he says to himself, you know what? I'm motivated to want to bench a second time. Here's another case. A man recites Kiddush on Friday night. And then he gets up and he decides, you know what? I'm going to recite another Kiddush. Maybe I didn't do a good job. Can't do so. Eino Omer Sahalel bebracha Pav Nosefes. A man recited Hallel. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Shekichamim Tzosem Tzivonu L'Kros Hallel. Correct? Or as the Sfaradim say, Ligmar Hallel. Right? So he finished his bracha. He said Hallel. Finished Hallel. I'm in the mood for another Hallel. Let's start making another bracha and recite a second Hallel. Absolutely not. Why? Because that's called, if you want to underline it on the 3rd line, here's a pencil, there's another pencil here if you want. That's called a bracha she'ena tzricha. Do you see that? On the 3rd line? Well, let me know if you found it. Bracha, 3 lines down from the top. Bracha she'ena tzricha. Keshe, you're looking, I don't know.
I don't see it.
Are you on page Lamed Tes?
I'm on that.
Well, you see, you skipped a page.
Oh, look at that. Okay. Oh, I see. Turn it over. I got it. I didn't know we had a turn over there. Got it. Okay, 3rd line. Got it.
Bracha she'ena tzricha. What's a bracha she'ena tzricha?
Well, it's not a chova.
Just translate it. Bracha she'ena tzricha. An unnecessary bracha. The halacha does not tolerate an unnecessary bracha. You fulfilled your obligation. That's it.
Well, every 5 minutes, somebody's saying Baruch Hashem. That's a bracha, right?
No, I think bracha means when you say it b'shemu malchus.
Okay.
Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam.
Okay, that's the
If you
formula.
come to the end of the tefillah and you want to thank God for something that really happened.
Say it in your own language.
Your own language, you can say.
Put it into Shema Kolenu, put it into Elokai Nitzar. Plenty of opportunities. But not to get up and daven another Shemona Esrei. What's the maximum number of Shemona Esreis we allow you? 3. You want to say Tfilas Nedava? Okay, but only on what condition? A voluntary tefillah is only acceptable if you're machadish b'davar.
Oh, Machadish B'davar, okay.
Okay, you have to add something that was not in the previous Shemona Esrei. But to repeat the same words and the same structure a second time when you've already fulfilled your obligation, that's an absolute no.
You can't,
Why?
how would if you have kavana, you're davening, but you wanted to include something, you don't.
So that's a
necessarily-
tefillah
You
sedavar.
don't have lashon, you don't have the particular language you're adding, but you have kavana, when you say this, I'm gonna think of that and think of that, without.
That could be mechadish b'davar, but that's a tefillah sedavar.
Oh.
But I'm talking about a case where he's just going to repeat the same Shemona Esrei, identical, and he already fulfilled his obligation.
If somebody forgets your lever, your boo, I don't know what it is. You're allowed to go and do another davening in this case.
That's because there's a mitzvah called Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, that every day, if it's a unique day, you have to thank Hashem in the structure of Shemona Esrei. So if you left out that Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, like we had the case of a suffix, right? There's certain situations in which the halacha will push you and urge you to recite another Shemona Esrei. But those are the exceptional cases. But what's the rule of thumb? What do we learn from Sefer Daniel? See, that's what I want you to underline. Exactly. Zimnin Tot. Only 3. So again, you have a lot of options here. During your Shemona Esrei, you could add your own tefillos. You have to figure out where to say it. It should be appropriate in that bracha. Like Shema Kolenu was already a general bracha, or at the end of Shemona Esrei. Then you have a tefillas nedava, which is an option if you want to be machadish b'dava. And then you have the case of suffix, where you're not sure if you davened enough. But if none of those conditions exist, you want to just repeat a Shemona Esrei after you've already fulfilled your obligation, and you're not anything new, so it doesn't qualify as a tefillas nedava, and you're not a suffix situation, you know for sure that you davened already, then the halacha doesn't allow you to daven again. But that's based on what? On a pasuk in Daniel. It's derived from a biblical source in Daniel.
It's not chumash, but it's
biblical in the sense of Tanakh.
Yeah.
The whole 24 holy books. So Rav Soloveitchik says the following, you know what? Why is it that when this person asks if he's allowed to daven an extra Shemona Esrei after he's already fulfilled his obligation, the Gemara has to stretch its arm out and prove this point based on a pasuk in Daniel? Would the Gemara have raised the question in Birkas Hamazon? Can I repeat Birkas Hamazon after I already fulfilled my obligation? It's a bracha she'etzricha. It's an unnecessary bracha. Cannot justify. And so too, if a man recited a bracha over Hallel, and now he wants to say the bracha again over Hallel, he can't. It's a bracha she'etzricha legufa. Einat tzricha. Man wants to say Kiddush a second time. Recite the whole Kiddush. What is it, a free-for-all? Okay, say another Kiddush. Now, I'm not talking about a case where somebody shows up after the first Kiddush. That's a different story.
Or you want to make a l'chaim.
No, but I mean, you sometimes say Kiddush in shul, or you say...
you do it in shul, then you do it at
Well,
home for your
again,
family.
Kiddush in shul is Bari Pri Hagafen. I'm talking about Kiddush on Friday night. Kiddush Friday night is at the Suda.
Yeah, but a lot of people, a lot of shuls, especially in Kutzlaritz, they make Kiddush in the shul.
Well, I don't know about that. Yeah, you're right. That's not
good because
technically because there's somebody might not have a place to go or something.
Not only that, but you have a lot of people who just don't make it.
But I'm asking you a different question, Brian. You made Kiddush at home on Friday night.
Yeah.
And now you're in the mood. You got in the mood. How did the Israelis say? Do you ever hear the phrase that Naspil Juk? Do you ever hear that phrase? Something fell into his brain, and he says, I want to make another Kiddush. So why not? We're very liberal. Make another Kiddush. Does Allah allow you to make another Kiddush?
No.
No. Oh,
Yeah,
how do you know that? You have a pasuk in Daniel?
You're allowed
Oh, if you want to daven a second time, I have to quote a pasuk in Daniel. But if I want to bench a second time, or recite Hal a second time, recite Kiddush a second time, let's say I took a lulav. Asher kitzonim etzosis tzvara al netilas lulav. Boom! I shook the lulav, and now you know what? I want to make another bracha on the lulav. Why not? Thank Hashem a second time. Am I allowed to do so?
No.
Absolutely not.
What
We're
happens-
very stingy about giving out brachas.
What happens when you want?
It's a bracha she'ein tzricha.
What happens when you want to blow shofar again for some sick person?
That's something else. Again, then you're really just mouthing the bracha on their behalf. They have to make the bracha, but this halacha called Shomer Kona and Kol Yisrael Arim Zelos and so on and so on. But I'm talking about a case where I'm in the mood. As I say, the Israeli phrase is very appropriate. And if Nasbo Juk Bavash, he has a craze, and he says, I want to make another bracha on shofar. I want to make another bracha on Hallel. I want to make another bracha on Kiddush. Why not? The more the merrier. Oh no. So bracha she'ein tzricha. But when it comes to tefillah, the Gemara vacillates back and forth. The Gemara says, wait a minute, we have a pasuk in Daniel. But if not for the proof from the pasuk in Daniel, I want you to learn the Rav Soloveitchik's methodology. It's very important to me. The methodology of Rav Soloveitchik is, if the Gemara has to prove a halacha, a principle, based on a pasuk, based on a biblical source, it means that logically, we would have come to the opposite conclusion. That the only reason I can't repeat an extra Shemona Esrei is because of the pasuk in Daniel. Had it not been for the pasuk in Daniel, go ahead and another Shemona Esrei. How many brachas are the Shemona Esrei?
19.
19. Another 19 brachas. In Yiddish we say Vasartir. Why should it bother me? Another 19 brachas. No, pasuk in Daniel.
What happens?
Why do I need a pasuk in Daniel? Is there any other bracha on the face of the earth that if you want to just keep shooting it out, one bracha after the other, over and over again, that undermines the very basic principle of bracha she'ein tzricha? We don't recite brachas. Want to go to a Hasidic Rebbe and get brachas? That's fine. As many brachas as you can get. But Asher Kitzanim it's also, or Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam, that's Shem Malchus, that we're very limited, very restricted. We don't allow you carte blanche to repeat brachas as many times as you want.
So if a person, you suddenly wake up, you're not in the greatest mood, and you're going davening, you're davening on your own, and you just don't feel like you've had a good davening, and then you want to go.
So the only option for you is a tefillas nidava. What does a tefillas nidava mean?
Yeah.
I recommend that you sit down with a pen and paper. I'm not joking. I mean this really seriously. In all earnest, sit down with a pen and paper, write yourself a list of what you're going to think about and add to your tefillah exactly where. Because you don't just add in the middle of a bracha about parnasa, you don't ask to pass an exam. You know what I mean? If you want to make a bracha, you want to ask Hashem for X, it's got to be put into a place where it belongs. As you do it in an organized way. That's called l'chadish badam. That's a tefillas nedava. That means when I got up to add the second Shemona Esrei, I did it al das nedava. That was my intention. So you have an option. I'm not locking you out. You're not incarcerated for the rest of your life. But you want to say another tefillah exactly the same as you did before, and you already fulfilled the mitzvah, that you can't do. Why? Because of a Gemara in Daniel, a pasuk in Daniel. Why? Rav Soloveitchik is very bothered according to his methodology, the way he learns Gemara. Why did the Gemara need a pasuk in Daniel? Was there a havamina? Did it cross our minds that you can repeat brachos? I'll give you 50 million brachos that we have. You can tell me each one I'm in the mood to repeat it. No. There's no such thing. We're not very laid back about brachos. We're very serious about brachos. We need an obligation to make a bracha. And he says the following. This is again on line 3. I just hope you're on the right page. It should say Lamed Tes on the bottom. That's all.
Limited, yeah.
Line 3. You have it?
Yeah, keep it, yeah.
Muchach mizeh. The Rav wants to derive a conclusion. Ki biyachas l'tefillah, with regard to Shemona Esrei, din zeh, this principle that we had before, ki yitzia yedei chova, that once you fulfilled your obligation, mafkas, it completely negates chal Hashem bracha. It doesn't allow you to make a brach because you fulfilled your obligation, veheter amirasa, and permission to recite it. With regard to tefillah, eino kayam klal. That principle doesn't apply. The cheftza shel tefillah behechsher yudches berchoseha yachol litztayer gam kishagavra kvar milei chovasa. This is a lot of fancy Talmudic language over here. Do you see the word chefta?
Yeah.
Underline the word chefta. And then in the next line, you see the word gavra. Kisha gavra.
Yeah.
Underline the word gavra. And this is what we call the Brisker methodology. That's attributed to Reb Chaim Brisker, our Rebbe's grandfather. And very often, Reb Chaim has a tendency of differentiating between a chefta and a gav. In the case of tefillah, of Shemona Esrei, there's the chefta of tefillah, the entity of tefillah, and then there's the chovas gavra, then there's obligation of the individual, of the personality. So we have the persona, it's called the gavra, and we have the entity and the object, which is called the chefta shel tefillah. And the breakthrough here is that ein chal Hashem tefillah, that status in halacha of a chefta shel tefillah, eino tluya b'chovas adam. It doesn't depend upon the obligation of the person. Normally, with regard to every other bracha, it's the chovas gavra that allows you to set up a chefta shel bracha. In the case of tefillah, no. We don't need the chovas gavra. All we need is to set up an entity of chefta shel tefillah. Just see if this works. Oh, look at that. Modern technology. Let's see if what I wrote here can make any sense. What we're doing is we're comparing and contrasting all brachos with tefillah. Tefillah means the 19 brachos, right? Of Shemona Esrei. In all brachos, we start with what? What is number one?
Chovat gavra.
Chovat gavra, and then Chovat gavra creates a chefta shel bracha. Chefta shel bracha means an entity of bracha which is acceptable according to Jewish law. In order to create a chefta shel bracha that's acceptable, it's got to be a bracha tzricha. What does a bracha tzricha mean? It means that you had a chovas gavra. I ate a meal. Once I eat the meal, what do I have? A chovas gavra. Once I have a chovas gavra, I can create a chefetz shel bracha. It's Hanukkah, and I have to thank Hashem for the. Well, let's start with Hallel, just to give you an example. So I have a chovas gavra to recite Hallel, and therefore I can create a chefetz shel bracha. Kiddush, I have a chovas gavra to recite Kiddush, and therefore I can create a chefetz shel bracha. Suppose I have no chovas gavra. Can I create a chefetz shel bracha? I already fulfilled my chovas gavra. No allowance, no tolerance, zero tolerance. Says Rav Soloveitchik, the exception to this rule is tefillah. Shemona the 19th verse. Why? Because here we ask the first question: can you create a chefetz shel bracha shel tefillah? And if the answer is yes, then you know what? Go ahead and do it. So that the chovas gavra comes second. We ask the first question is it possible to create this entity called tefillah? Let's take the following example. Nashim. What kind of mitzvos, what kind of obligations is a woman exempt from?
Time bound.
Time bound, excellent. Zman grom. How many times a day do I have to daven? I'm a man, let's say. 3. Shachars, mincha, ma'ariv. What does that make tefillah? How do you classify it? Is it time bound or is it not time bound?
I think it is time bound.
It's time bound.
Definitely time bound.
Yeah,
Is it possible that women would be obligated in tefillah even though it's time bound?
I think so.
Why? According to Rav Soloveitchik. Because a woman can create, no less than a man, a chefetz shel tefillah, chefetz shel bracha. Memela, we generate the chovas gavra. The chovas gavra comes second. It's a result of the chefetz shel tefillah.
Even though I sometimes I understand it, and then now all of a sudden I'm forgetting. What would be the simple translation of chefetz shel bracha?
Chefetz shel bracha means a permissible bracha, an entity that I'm allowed to create, as opposed to something which is unnecessary.
Oh, okay.
Ain't no tzricha. It's just superfluous. It's just extraneous. It's extra.
And you can use the word Baruch Atah Hashem.
In which case? In the case of Ein Tzricha, in the case where, again, in all brachos, the answer is no, I can't. I'm not allowed to.
So
it's a bracha Ein Tzricha. I'm almost like, desecrating God's name by using his name in a bracha when I don't have any obligation to make that bracha.
Well, somebody like me, I remember, Mendelevich was relieved from prison. Menachem Begin made a bracha. The Chiyam B'Kiman V'Gyanu Lazar, when Netanyahu was elected.
So you have to know what are the halachas of Shechianu v'Kimanu, under what situation. But if you come to the conclusion that this occasion generates an obligation to recite Shechianu, then you're obligated to recite Shechianu. But I'm talking about a case we already recited Shechianu. Now he says, I want to make another Shechianu.
But you might have somebody else who wants to say that.
Again, there's no one else, just me, myself, and I. Do I have the option of jumping on the bandwagon and reciting a second bracha? Why not? As I said before in Yiddish, you say, what does it bother you? So another bracha. No. We don't allow another bracha. Heaven forbid. There's got to be an obligation. Again, when are you obligated? We're going to study that for 1,000,000 years until we finally understand when and what situation you're obligated. But I'm talking about a clear-cut case that's undeniable. You fulfilled your obligation, period. No other factors. There's no other people came in, no other events, nothing, garnished. You decided, I want to make another bracha. My prerogative. Halacha says no. Says Rav Soloveitchik, there's one exception in the whole world the whole constellation, the halachic constellation of
Yeah.
brachos, there is one set of brachos that will tolerate repetition, even though I fulfilled my obligation. And there's no nedava here. I didn't add lo chidashti badava. I'm repeating the same Shemona Esrei again. Am I allowed to do it?
Yep.
I'm allowed to do it. Why? Because I have the power to create a chefta shel tefillah, a chefta shel bracha. The chovas gavra comes later. All other brachas, what comes first? Chovas gavra. Look at what I wrote here. I hope I didn't waste my time here by writing it on the board. You start in all brachas with the chovas gavra. You want to tell me that Mendelovich got out of prison and therefore there's a chovas gavra to say Shafiano? Fine, you got a chovas gavra. You want to tell me that on Yom Ha'atzmaut I have to recite Hallel? You have a chovas gavra.
That was my next question.
That's a chovas gavra.
It doesn't matter.
But you're going to say Hallel twice on what you call it, on Yontif or on Hanukkah or on Rosh Chodesh, whatever it is. No, that you can't do. You don't have the option.
Some people say that you can't say it because it happened. You're making new brachas. You're making new.
No. There's no such thing as new brachas. We don't allow new brachas.
But they're saying Yom Ha'atzmaut to Hanukkah new brachas.
No. That's not new. It's the same old bracha. There's no such thing as a new bracha. It's the same old bracha. We don't change brachas. Somebody wanted to change the. I don't want to get into it. They wanted to change the tefillah for Tisha B'Av because how could you say that the city is destroyed? The Rav didn't tolerate that. We don't change brachas. We don't have the power, the authority to create new brachas. We can decide whether there's an obligation or not. Does the establishment of the state of Israel obligate me in Hallel? Okay, that's a valid question. Then you're talking about a chovas gavra, but you don't make up a new bracha. We don't invent new brachas.
Some people say.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, if I'm disappointing you. This is halacha. I mean, again, today we live in a society where everybody wants to do everything. I'm seeing this in my neighborhood. Yeah. I think I told you about it. Whatever. I don't want to get into it. I get very upset about it.
It's very upsetting because it's like creating. We had the father and mother. Now all of a sudden we got the one parent number one, parent number two, and people.
I don't know.
Name from Gershon to.
It's a crazy society. Who's male and who's female, and today you're this and tomorrow you're that, and now there's in America there are now legal lawsuits about men who are playing on an all-women's basketball team. That's a great idea. Why not declare that you're female? Maybe you have to undergo a little bit of a surgery or something, and then you play on a women's basketball team. That's it. Can you imagine if every women's basketball team would recruit men to play basketball? You know what I'm saying? This is the society we live in.
It is.
Well, we don't know where the bathrooms belong to this gender or that gender. I'm telling you, you think I'm crazy. There's certain things that if you say in a classroom to a child that the child is dressing the wrong way or something, you could be prosecuted in America for that. It's a crazy society.
Prosecuted around the corner here.
Yeah, here too. I don't want to get into it here.
It's sad,
so I'm just saying, we are trying to learn the genuine halacha. The genuine halacha here is very strict because it's Yiras Hashem. We have to have a fear of the name of God. We don't just say the name of God and not in a form of a bracha. A bracha takes on its own structure, but Rav Soloveitchik is saying, and this is a pretty big breakthrough, that tefillah is different. Because in tefillah, the focus is not on the chovas gavra, but rather on the chefza shel tefillah. Are you creating a tefillah? And is that a valid tefillah? And listen to this. No, I have to. I'm gonna plot if I don't get to this point here.
Okay.
He says here an amazing thing. Every mitzvah requires kavana lates yedei chova. Do you know what that means?
To fulfill your obligation, you got to come on.
Yeah, when I get up and I do a mitzvah, what should I have in mind? What should be my kavanah?
The mitzvah.
Well, again, what do you mean by the mitzvah? Let's be more specific. Lotzeis yedei chovasa.
To fulfill your obligation.
Right. I have in mind that why am I taking this lulav on the 15th of Tishrei? What, I'm in the mood to shake a palm tree branch? What is it? Oh, it's cool, shake your lulav. Remember that video? No. You have in mind, Lord says, God commanded me.
Right.
I'm doing this because I'm obligated to do so.
Yeah.
Says Rav Soloveitchik, there's one exception to that rule, and that's tefillah.
Oh yeah.
You don't get up to daven and say, "Oh, I'm obligated to do the mitzvah of tefillah, and that's why I'm daven." How does the Rav know such a thing? He has two sources for this. Number one, a Gemara in Brachos Chav Ches. Take a look. One, we're counting down from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see 7 lines down from the top?
Yep.
Brachos Chav Ches Amid Beis. You want to underline this, or you have a pencil? Rabbi Lazar Omer, ha'oset filoso keva, ain't filoso tachnuna. You can see one thing for sure. Rabbi Lazar is he's what's the word I want to use? He's ranking out. How would you say he's coming again? He's coming down hard against someone who sets up his tefillah. Excuse me, as a keva.
Routine. He said without kavanah.
More than routine. No. My keva. Omer Rav Yaakov Bar Idi, Omer Rav Oshia Kolsha Tfiloso Doma Olav Kemasui. What does the word masui mean? Literally, it means, a burden on my shoulders. But what does it mean here in this context?
I would say like a machine or something. I don't know.
No, masui means, let's say, for example, again, you have to be sensitive to like the metaphoric language of Chazal. Let's say you're standing in front of the master, and the master puts a burden on your shoulders. Again, that's a literal. What does it mean metaphorically that you accept this burden? Okay, in a word, chiv. Doma alav kechova. When I say to Hashem, I'm taking this lulav because you obligated me to do so, and I want to fulfill my obligation. What am I basically saying? Chova. What am I excluding? I'm not taking the lulav because I'm in a good mood and I enjoy the lulav, shake your lulav. I'm doing it, God, because you commanded me.
It's not ratzon, it's obligation.
No, but you should do it for simcha.
Well,
correct. But only because of the chova. What generates the simcha is the chova, the fact that God commanded me and I am obligated and I am now fulfilling his obligation. That very scenario leads me to simcha. But in tefillah, Rabbi Loza says that if you make your tefillah into a masui, meaning if you would, like you do with every other mitzvah, say, God, I'm not doing this because it's kef, it's a lot of fun, but I'm doing it because you commanded me. That means your tefillah is not tefillah v'tachnunim. That's not what tefillah is all about. L'chora asks of Soloveitchik, tzarich lahavin. Madua lo yechaven lotzes yidei chovaso. Why shouldn't he get up for Shemona Esrais and have in mind that I'm doing this because God, you commanded me? Harei abiniyah shel kiyum shar mitzvahs, and all other mitzvahs, what motivates me? Who? Hargashas hachova. It's the fact that I feel that it's a burden placed by the Ribono Shalom on my shoulder, and I'm happy to fulfill my obligation. Shekach limda osanu halacha. The halacha says that before I do a mitzvah, what do I recite? Asher kidshanu mitzvos of itzivanu. What does it mean? God, you have sanctified me with your commands. You have commanded me, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm taking a lulav. I'm eating a matzah. I'm listening to the shofar. Anio said over zeh. Why am I doing this action? I'm making a declaration. Asher kidshanu mitzvos of itzivanu. Because I feel the chova. But in tefillah, Am I going to make a statement that God, I am praying to you because you obligated me, because it's a burden on my shoulder? Am I going to recite Asher Kidshanu Mitzvosav V'Tzivanu Lispalel? Oh, no. Rabbi Loza has taught us that if you make your tefillah into a burden, then ain't tefillah tachnunim. It's not really tachnunim. What does the word tachnunim mean?
Well, penitential.
Supplication, excellent. A petition. Do I come to petition to the king and ask what I need and want to come close to the king through tefillah because he obligated me to do so? Muchach mizeh tefillah shona. Tefillah is different than every other mitzvah. You're not going to implement your tefillah because you're obligated to do so. And he quotes now, in addition to the Gemara Brachos Chavtes that we had before, a Mishnah in Avos, Rabbi Shimon Omer v'zoy b'kriyat shema b'tefillah ukshat mispal al tas tefiloscha keva. Don't make it into a burden. Don't declare that I'm doing this because of the commission or the obligation that was imposed on me. I'm asking God to have compassion. Utachnunim. I'm petitioning Lifnei Makom. This makes tefillah radical. Why is it that in all other mitzvahs, what do we begin with? Chovas Gavra, but not in tefillah. In tefillah, you start with the Chovas Gavra and you say, God, you commanded me. Then you're making your tefillah to keva, which is the opposite of tachnunim. He says, Shoni tefillah in the next paragraph. I just wanted to see what time we're up to. Okay. Shoni zebet tefillah miyusar al gzeres hakasuv. The Torah says, this is a posuk in Yoel, Kikel chanun v'rachamu erech hapayim v'rav chesed v'nachem al hara. God, you are a compassionate and sympathetic divine being, a creator, and you're long-winded and you're full of chesed and compassion, and you change your mind from an evil decree. HaKadosh Baruch Hu keracham v'chanun. Why do we daven? We daven because God is a racham v'chanun. And what kind of tefillah do we have? A tefillah of racham v'chanun. Ein chovas hagavra kovas es chalos tefillah v'echshera. What sets up the tefillah as an entity, a chefta shel tefillah? It's not the chovas gavra, but rather kovas es atzma b'yosa chefta shel rachamim u'tachnunin. If you're petitioning God, that sets it up as a chefta shel tefillah. Forget about the chovas gavra. Leave out the chovas gavra. Hago asmecha ha'im tzorech adam lechavim lotzis dechova b'tefillah. Is it possible that in order to fulfill tefillah, you need what? You need to have in mind that you're doing your obligation? No. Vadai shalom, that's for surely not true. The kavanah in tefillah ma'keves, the necessary kavanah in tefillah is not lotzes yidei chovaso, not to fulfill the chovas gavra, but rather kavanah of rachmim v'sachnunim, where you come in front of God with all the intention of petitioning and begging God for mercy and for compassion. Lo machshavas yitzias yidei chovaso. And Lamashal, take a look at, now we're going to turn to page Mem that you had before, Gershon, right? Le'inyan chiyuv noshim b'tefillah. The Gemara says in Brachos that why are women obligated in tefillah? Derachmeninu. Because what's the essence of tefillah? What is the chefta shel tefillah? It's rachamim. It's bakoshes rachamim. And a woman, no less than a man, needs rachamim. The Gemara says, as far as tashlumin is concerned, let's say you missed the tefillah, you're allowed in the next owner to add an extra tefillah. Came under tlusa rachmei, because tefillah is rachamim. Therefore, kol emes de boy matzli v'yozil. When he needs that rachamim, he goes and he prays. And therefore, Yesoda Dvarim, says Rav Soloveitchik, is that tefillah shona mikol mitzvahs haTorah. Tefillah is in a category of its own, in contrast to all the mitzvahs of the Torah that we're obligated in. With regard to all mitzvahs of the Torah, we start with the chovas gavra, And then the action that comes as a fulfillment of the Chovas Gavra has a Chal Shem. It is a meaningful mitzvah. For example, Birkas Hamazon. You ate a meal, the Gavra is chayev in bracha after he finishes his meal, and that creates a Hefzer Shel Birkas Hamazon. But if you're not chayev because you already benched, it's ridiculous to get up and bench again. It's the Chovas Gavra that's going to generate the Hefzer Shel Bracha. Who adin b'chol Hallel vodah, like we spent in Hanukkah. He's in the mood to recite a second Hallel, not for the sake of somebody else. The Chovas HaGavra mitbateit b'yitzira shem bracha. How does that Chovas Gavra manifest itself? It creates a bracha. We don't need a pasuk to teach me that yefshel hachpil es amiras habracha. That certainly is a bracha she'en tzricha. You've already fulfilled your bracha. Now you want to do it again? There's no Chovas Gavra. Baruch Chovas HaGavra Paka, the Chovas HaGavra was removed because he already recited Birkas Hamazon. Ein levarech pam shnia. V'im yevarcho, if he'll bench a second time around, tehei bracha zu levatola. The over lo tisa Shem Hashem l'shav. You're using God's name in vain. Baram, however, by conscious betfila, she chefta shel rachamim, v'eina mehavi yechida shel keva. It's not an entity of obligation with a burden that's placed upon my shoulder, but that it's rachamim. It's my existential need, if you will, for rachmei shamayim seder afuch. The sequence is just the opposite. You don't start with the Chovas Gavra. Ein birchas hatfila olos ledargas bracha. The bracha of tefillah does not get upgraded to the status of a bracha al yidei Chovas HaGavra. Elamei atzman. It's a spontaneous generation. There's a hefzer shel tefillah that is organized with brachos, 18 brachos. She'eina tluya klal b'chiyuv HaGavra. Doesn't depend upon a chiyuv. If it depended on a chiyuv Gavra, there would be no havamina to add a fourth tefillah, and there would be no havamina that women would be obligated in tefillah. But rather, what sets up the hefzer shel tefillah? It's the rachamim in and of itself. There still is a genuine halachic entity of tefillah that's justified because, even though there's no Chovas Gavra already fulfilled, because I have a rachamim. Klape layim, with regard to tefillah, the exact reverse of all mitzvahs is true. The sequence is just the opposite. Chovas HaGavra, novas, where does it emanate from? If I have the opportunity and the possibility of creating a hefzer shel tefillah, memela is a Chovas Gavra. The Chovas Gavra is a result, and therefore gam nashim, even women are obligated in tefillah, even though it's a mitzvah seishas man grama, it's a time-bound mitzvah. Mishum shechovas Gavra mushreshes b'kiyum chativa miyuchedes shel tefillah kerachmim v'tachnunim. The Chovas Gavra is a result of the opportunity and the possibility of creating an entity of tefillah as rachmim tachnunim, and therefore there's no need, there's no sense to limit the obligation of tefillah to men, and leave women out, because their tefillah, no less than the tefillah of man, is a hefzer shel rachamim. And memela, once you have the opportunity to create a hefzer shel rachamim, therefore the Chovas Gavra falls into place as a result. Okay, this is where we'll stop for tonight. I mean, again, I put in all my energy here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's just I'm so excited about this, It just like changes your whole understanding here. So wait, Brian, you want to give me back these pages?
Yeah.
All right, where are they? These?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll take this back.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, then.
It's good to get back.
Yeah, wow.
Thank you, Rama.